Welcome to Fraud Exposed. My name is Lori Maddock, expert for crediteducationconsultants.com. And if you want to avoid fraud and want to know what to do if you've been a victim, stay with us. We don't want you to get ripped off. Now, today we're going to be talking about romance scams. Yes, romance scams. How can you prevent it and what to do if you're a victim? So I'm going to have my guests introduce themselves. Win, why don't you start?
Hi, my name is Win. I'm a CEO and founder of Cyber Armor.
Good morning. My name is Ravi Bhutani, CEO and founder of Cyberculture.
Okay, well, let's hit it up then with the questions here. This romance scam actually happened to an acquaintance of mine. I don't know all the details, but I know that she lost her life savings, which is not a good thing. Um, how do you guys think romance scams take place? I mean, is it mostly through social media, dating sites? Things I've thought about, like you could Google Lens the photos or use TinEye reverse, image search to you have to be a private detective. Or do they try and move it to email or WhatsApp? How does it work?
Maybe you want to go?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Win. So the idea is that, how do they sort of get into your emotions, right?
Yes.
Whether it's like a text, they could be like, hey, how's it going? Long time no chat. And then again, it's from a random number, and then somebody would respond to it and be like, hey, we met at this place, and kind of like just the confusing tactics to kind of reel them in to say, okay, well, the sort of start like a text type of relationship and mess with your emotions. It's kind of scary and sad at the same time. uh you know Sometimes sometimes humans are lonely, and sometimes
Yes.
they fiend for that attention, and sometimes they fall into the wrong hands of a scammer or somebody that's doing these romance scams. And that's sharing to you my at least my understanding. When Go ahead.
Yeah, it's platform right now like the social media where you can connecting with everyone and you can pretend to be anyone. So as these cyber criminal, they start linking your connection, right? Build a relationship with you slowly and building that trust. And that's how they get you. I mean, is, once they have your confidence, your trust, then they start that process of scamming, right? Um, by, for example, I heard one of the story is where the criminal said that they investing in crypto, right? And they're making a very high return off it. So they're building the trust with these victims. And initially the victims would give them about few $100, and this
Mm.
scammer provide a return of, let's say, double it. So as us being a human, our nature is being greedy. So we start to know that this person, we've been trusting them for a very long time, and we making double the money, right? So they would provide the criminal more money. So when the criminal see the they receive enough, they bail out, disconnected, right? And you cannot do anything about it. Um, and this is going back into the social media issue where you can become anyone you want, right? So you have to be very careful with who you talk to online. The person that you think is same similar age with you could be 40, you know, older than you, or could be a lot younger than you. You just don't know the difference. And with the new technologies, with the fake, video, fake using AI, for example, you can pretend to be anyone. So it's very scary, and the new age of AI gonna introduce a lot more problem with this romance scam. So
Now, once they get the attention, once they get your attention, the scammer, are they generally researching you? They find out, your name, go to your social media, so they're learning a bit about you, and like you said, Rambier, almost confusing you, like letting you think that maybe you've met them before, and because a lot of people don't keep their profiles locked down, they could actually be one of your friends on a Facebook page, correct?
yes, that's
Absolutely.
100% correct.
Absolutely. And like Facebook is a prime example. And I'm not I'm not talking negative about Facebook, but there's a ton of scammers on there, right? So sometimes they'll do account takeover of, let's say, a high school colleague that you haven't talked to in for years, and all of a sudden reaches out to you, be like, oh, I just got a divorce and I have a crush on you, and it's a scammer. Like they won't even. You'll be like, oh my God, like maybe I had a crush on that same person, and then and that's somebody that you actually knew in high school. So
Right.
it's just like, how do you even catch that before, and before you probably become a victim, and then all of a sudden you're scammed out thousands of dollars, right? It's unfortunate because you don't know what you don't know. And let's say, I'd say the best advice, if you have sort of a gut feeling that this doesn't seem right, why would this person reach out to me after 25 years? That makes absolutely no sense. But again, that's just sharing with
Right.
you based on from an observation perspective.
Well, the AI part, that's scary to me. I mean, I've seen some of the AI and where they make people, they look very real. Now, I think for me, I think I can tell when it's AI. I come from, my parents are artists, so I can see that something, it looks too perfect. In other words, they look too perfect. It's just like when people put up selfie pictures of animals and 2,000 people write great photo, and I'm thinking great photo. It's the whole thing is an artificial photo. It's not even a real photo. But do you think that the AI will continue to improve as far as the reality of what it's going to look like? So, Rambier, I'm looking at you now, and how do I know that you're not AI? Is there any way right now that anyone can check and see whether you are a real person or not a real person, or there's no technology yet that really defines that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Laura, that you bring up. I'm hoping that there are companies that are starting to develop to detect that if this person is not legitimate, because AI is so good that it could mimic exactly who you are. It could talk like you. Even getting calls, for donation companies now, like you could just play with it. Like I'd just be like, and I know, jokes aside, I'd be like, hey, I'm AI, just to mess around with them, and they'll be like,
Yeah.
I am not AI, just to, like, and you can totally tell that there's not a human on the other line, right? Because they're going based on knowledge of machine learning, and again, not to get too technical, but the idea is that it's getting so good that that in the dark space or world, if you want to call it, you just the goal here ideally is to limit yourself on social media and posting and platforms if you can. If not, I get if it's part of your professional career, you need to be on there.
Mm.
Just lock down your accounts like it's nobody's business, right? I mean, that's my 2 cents. When?
yeah, and just you have to be aware of all the threat out there. The more information you provided to people in the social media, for example, the more risk you are to it because people will use it against you. And going back to the AI, yeah, it's right now like one of the demonstration is you can be speaking um, like this in this video, and the translation is automatically to another language, and you can't tell the difference, right? So you know, going back into the romance of, is
Okay.
it the criminal from in of the other side of the world, right? Is it now it's like with the AI, they can use that benefit to really impersonating American speaking perfect English, and performing their attacks. So and it's really hard to identify the difference. Right now, there's still, the AI is very new, in the sense,
Excuse
so
me.
you still can tell slightly the difference between real or not. But soon, in a year, in 6 months, it will be perfect, and the problem is gonna be more scarier. So
Right. Hang on for a second, because I'm gonna cough. Oh, 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 sorry about that. Gotta give it 5 seconds. Hang on, 5, 4. Now, will romance scammers, do they ever appear on video, or do they pretty much hide themselves behind the audio?
I'm not familiar with it, but what we know is they do have people representing as a person to talk to. So in the offline, there are a group of people that talking, through the chat to um, instantly like that. But yeah, I think it's both case, but they use a special type of people that representing when they need to in the real time data.
So what should you not disclose to yourself about yourself to a stranger? What don't you know? What do you not tell them? I mean, you don't give out any personal information. Uh, But how do you know? You meet someone on a social media site and you think it's a date. I know people have said if they never want to meet in person and they just go back and forth, chances are it's a scammer. If it's someone who's going to meet you, you have a better chance of it, I think, being a real person, although they could still be a scammer. But I think in that case, you should meet in a public place. So, like when I've had friends who are single, or when I was briefly single, what I would do is I would always let somebody know where I was going, or have a friend nearby and a bailout, because you don't really know what you're going to get. And this is really, you're making me think of this really sad story that goes back probably 20 something years. Do you guys remember MySpace?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So I had a student who was probably about 14 at the time, and she told me a story about how her next door neighbor, maybe about 12 at the time, they had this MySpace account, and she made contact, or someone made contact with her pretending to be her age range, and wanted her, she was in New Jersey, to take a bus to New York City Port Authority. And when she met the guy, he was much, much older, but she still got in the vehicle, and he took her back to his house and he raped her. And that's, in a way, instead of a romance scam for money, a romance scam can also be, I think, for something like rape. If it really is a real person, they're going to look at your social media and try to determine, are you introverted and lonely and you need a friend? So I think you have to be, I mean, it's getting to the point where absolutely nothing is safe. So I know, like, I don't really disclose anything that I consider private to a stranger. Um, their purpose really is to get as most personal information from you as they can, because most of them are going for the money, and generally the money's out of the country. So romance movers, they move pretty quickly, though, I think, once they have your information, correct? And then what do? They say things like, "Oh, I've been mugged, or I need to borrow money, or I want to come, to see you, but I don't have money to travel." Well, first off, if somebody says, "I don't have the money to come and see you and I want to come and see you," I'd be like, well, obviously you can't afford anything. If you can't afford a plane ticket, why would I be paying that? So I think they move pretty quickly. Do scammers also do that check overpayment scam where, they say, "Oh, I'm going to send you a check, but, and you're only going to send me back a certain amount," and then the check seems to be bad. So I think that's another thing people have to watch out for. Can scammers, if these are scammers, they may be hackers, can they access your banking information with just your phone number? I mean, do they get information from the dark web and they call and pretend they're interested in you? Is that another way of scamming? How much can they get from you?
Well, it's all depend on how vulnerable you are, right? So a lot of the romance scam they develop over time, so they don't really attacking you within a week, within a month, right? They build the relationship over time, and they start to, once they feel that they have enough of trust in you, then they start that process of scamming. Um, and a lot of these, like, they very different from account takeover type of scam, where they log into your bank account and try to steal money from there. This is a different way where they just build relationship, and like one of the example you mentioned is they're asking for money, right? It's like, I just got into an accident, and if you can loan me, $1,000 so I can go to the hospital. How can you say no to that when you have a relationship with, when you trust that person significantly, right? So it's very tough emotional type of attacks, and this scammer, they specialize in this. They know, they using emotion as their method of attacking, the victims. So,
Right.
Ramir,
So
do you have
if that
anything to add?
thousand, yeah, if that $1,000, and they did that to 10 people a day, they'd be making $10,000 a day. So they're basically psychologically motivated in that they're learning about you and how they can get close to you. And it might be different for a different person. Geez, I mean, they must have a whole list with notes on the people that they speak with. So they kind of they can play a different part. They're like, I want to say good actors, they're like bad actors in a sense, because they're getting to know you and you start to believe, hey, this person really cares about me. And especially there's a lot of lonely people nowadays, a lot of
Yeah.
senior citizens. If you guys have ever seen Dr. Phil, I've seen clips on Facebook, and he specializes in, talking about these types of scams. And it's usually somebody who's older and who thinks that, some other person is madly in love. It could be a 70-year-old lady, and the guy claims he's 40. And so how many 70-year-old women are really going to be interested in a 40-year-old man? And they pretend like they initially have money. I think that's part of the draw. They pretend that they're very wealthy. But if they're very wealthy and then they come back to you, then asking you for money, I think that's pretty much saying, it's a no-go. Um,
Yeah.
I want to ask you guys, I'll ask Rambier this question. Are there any apps, are there any spam or scam apps? Like I know we have on the phone, where it shows you if it's spam. Is there anything that completely protect you? Or is there nothing at this point that really can completely protect you?
Well, I would say there is no guarantee and protection. And Win can attest to this in the cybersecurity world, at least. We say trust but verify, but also the idea is trust no one. But obviously, that's not likely. I mean, you have family, you have friends, you got to trust some people, right? Unless you want to go
No,
in a
you don't.
bunker and separate yourself from the world. Again, highly unlikely in that case. I would say adding like a virtual private network as a service on your mobile phone can maybe reduce some of that noise. I know, not representing AT&T or any of those big telecom companies, but AT&T has a really built-in spam blocker. It can tell you if spam's calling you. The downside to that is, what if it's a legitimate call, but they'll leave a voicemail, right? Saying,
Right.
this is so and so, I got a new number, or that again, adding additional layers of, let's say, technology in your phone can somewhat reduce it, but you got to be aware, you got to be vigilant. Ask a friend, phone a friend, right? And even if you want to email them, yeah, you can email them, but ask maybe around to say, okay, well, this is the situation. Don't send any money. Don't give anybody any money, especially if you haven't trust, if you haven't built that trust or established that trust, right? I wanted to, and again, not to keep too long, but I wanted to share this interesting story. So
Sure.
I knew this colleague of mine. She went from the IT world over to the insurance realm, right? And sometimes, from time to time, she'll send some of her clients because they might have either felt like they've been scammed or something is going on. And this is a very true story. So this lady called me directly and told me her story, where she was a victim of a romance scam, like a celebrity, right? Like a known celebrity, and they scammed her probably out of 60 or 70K. She tapped in
Oh,
her, I know, she tapped into her IRA, and she asked me like, what to do. She's like, should I get a loan? I was like, no, contact all your financial institutions, let them know exactly what happened, file a police report. I mean, you need those documents. And again, I'm not an attorney nor represent legal counsel, but I'm just giving you based on my knowledge and understanding. You got to have those documentations, especially if those financial institutions are coming back to you and saying, well, you got to pay it back, right? And again, imagine the emotions and feelings of thinking that someone genuinely like loved you and could have been somebody famous. And that's also another thing that goes on celebrities romance scams. Like they pretend to be somebody
Wow.
famous. I mean, you got to watch out for these things. You got to just ask around. I'm sure you get called all the time. The countless hours of not being able to maybe get compensated, but at least help someone and sort of advice it forward, not pay it forward, but
Yeah.
advice it forward. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the whole, like I said, the whole thing is scary. And one of the things that the banks are not doing now is if you reveal that you have given personal information to somebody else, a lot of them are not giving you back the money if it's been wired, especially when it's been wired out of the country, but not always. So I think the best advice really is don't give any of your personal information, your banking information, your credit cards, that should all be locked down to you because the person really is a stranger if you haven't met them and there's no way to know. And it's funny when I talk to my family and friends about the show, I go, geez, every time I get off, the show with you guys, I'm more scared because you don't know really who you're talking to anymore. And to me, that's a scary thing. Now, one of the things you can do, even if the call is spoofed, are you guys familiar with Star 57? Star 57. So if you get off the phone and you're 99% sure you got a scammer and they're asking you for money and they're doing all this stuff, and if you're going to plan to legally pursue it, you could hit, after you hang up, you hit Star 57 on your phone. And what it does is it traces the real number back to the police department, where of course you could also file a police report. So that is one way of doing it, but it's the whole world has changed now, and the fact that AI has gone this far scares me. I mean, we're talking about romance scams, but I read recently that Facebook had two robots, and apparently they started speaking to each other in another language that no one knew. These two robots made up their own language, and I think, okay, Skynet, here we're coming. It's going to be like the Terminator, and that's really where it does seem to be going. Because if I can't look at you and know that you're really a real person, then why would I even risk it? But the loneliness factor, I think, is a big issue in the romance scams. So before we finish up, do you guys have anything you would like to add?
I think it's great that yeah, you have to be very careful out there on the internet. It's hard to say this, but yeah, trust no one, right? If you must meet someone, set up a place, a physical place, and verify, confirm that they are real first before you take in any next step. So.
Right. Rambir, any last words?
Yeah, no, just stay vigilant. If you feel something, ask someone for some guidance, and sometimes they know somebody that might be in the IT world or cyber world that knows a thing or two, and you can tell them right away and shut it down from them potentially sending 10K to somebody that says, "Oh, I'm in love with you and I care about you," and it's unfortunate, right? Because like, yeah, you're right. During the winter times and when there's less sun, folks tend to get lonely, regardless of age. I think it can
I agree.
range from young to 200 plus if people live that long. But that the goal is just
Right.
be vigilant, stay safe, ask advice. I'm sure Laura, you get called all the time. I'm
I
sure
do.
Wynn and I may start getting some of those calls, but hey, it doesn't cost anything to ask someone, right? I mean, why would you send someone that you don't even know that you're communicating text messages? You never talk to the person, or maybe they send you
Right.
photos and they're AI. I mean, AI generated images. I mean, when you can add your 2 cents, it looks so real. You can't even tell. the difference anymore. It's,
Right.
or a little bit, but not so much unless you have it under a microscope or you have a tool to tell you that, hey, this is a false image.
Right. I'm gonna leave this with one last story. So I have an older family member, and she at some point she wants to try, the online dating. And I said, okay, well, if you do online dating, I'm going to monitor everything that comes back. In other words, I want to see what's coming back. But if you decide to meet with anybody, I'm going to be there. Pick a place that's big enough where maybe I can sit, in a different section, let's say of a restaurant or a Starbucks or wherever, where I can keep an eye. And the other advice I gave her was, when you're done, let them leave first. You go to the ladies' room, let them leave first. Because imagine if she gets in her car and now either follows her or, picks up her license plate. There are people out there crazy enough to do that kind of stuff. So I think you should, yeah, if something seems s- very emotional in a short amount of time from someone you don't know or haven't heard from in years and years, those are to me are red flags. Like, why are you suddenly interested? So I think the best thing is no personal information whatsoever. What you really should try and do is reverse it so that you're getting information out of them and see what is it that they are willing to give up about themselves, and whether or not you are going to meet in person, or is it going to be a back and forth, on the computer. And then you kind of know if it's just back and forth on the computer and they start asking you for money, what's the answer? It's no, no, and no. So I want to thank you guys very much for doing the show, and we'll be back very soon to do another show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.